Back when Plasma Bigscreen first got revived alongside the launch of Plasma 6.7, I didn't actually give Plasma Bigscreen a try. So let's go and do exactly that. Now, I'm going to be doing this on a Fedora KDE system on hardware, but it is packaged on other distros as well. There's Arch Linux, Postmarket OS, NixOS, of course, KDE Neon, or you can build it yourself, and by the time you see this, it very well may be on other distros as well. Now, at least on Fedora, it is split into two separate packages. We have Plasma Bigscreen and Plasma Bigscreen Wayland. Checkout's being done on your specific distro. With both of these installed, then Plasma Bigscreen is not a new mode inside of Plasma. This is a whole new desktop session, so inside of your display manager, there will be a new option, Plasma Bigscreen, or if you want to, you can open it up from your TTY. And here is Plasma Bigscreen. This is already quite visually striking. One of the issues that existed in the earlier iterations of Plasma Bigscreen is they never actually fully implemented the design goals they had. There were design docs for Plasma Bigscreen going well back into Plasma 5, but it was abandoned long before that ever happened. So the state it was in before the new developers took it over were kind of just not great. Like, it functioned, it mostly worked, but it didn't really have any level of polish to it. Now, don't expect this to be a perfect project with perfect polish. Right now it's looking good, but there are still quite a few problems with this early version. The first thing that comes to mind is the colors for the icons. For most of them, it's pretty much fine, but I believe it's doing an approximation of the average color of the icon. So for things like Steam, it's working great. For Firefox, I don't think purple is really the best choice to go with here. Maybe for some applications you could manually override it. Maybe there's some way to maybe better approximate the color to use, maybe have more of a focus on the primary colors being used. I don't know. This is basically just using the same algorithm I believe that accent colors are using anyway. Just looking at it isn't very useful, so how do we navigate? Well, that is done with the arrow keys. You can go between the different sections here, and it's all pretty straightforward. If you go up from this section, it will take you up to the options up here. Right now, they're obviously very much the desktop-oriented icons. There's probably a better way to frame this. Maybe you could keybind them or something else like that, but this is still very early days for the project. Also, you can use your mouse to go and click on these as well. I don't know if you just saw the screen flicker there. That does sometimes happen. Now, you might think you could probably go and scroll through these different sections. That cannot be done with the mouse. Mouse scrolling does not currently do anything. It feels like an oversight. It feels like maybe it probably should be possible, but we'll see what happens in a future version. If you want to go and open an application, either you can go and click on it directly, like say with Kmines right there, or we can go and navigate to it and then press enter. Now, I'll get more into the applications in just a bit, so we're going to close this one for now and move on to something else. Whilst not at all obvious, and this is going to be a very recurring trend throughout this video, if we press escape, it opens up this quick settings menu. It's not really very useful right now, but from here, you can access things like your network settings. I pressed the wrong keyboard. I have two keyboards in front of me right now. Again, I did the same thing. I should put this one further away. We can take a screenshot. We can access our sound settings. We can access the full settings. And we can go and enable the on-screen keyboard. Now, there is another way to get into these settings here as well. That is done by going up to the settings button right here. Also, those same settings can be accessed from the main screen. We have our network settings. We have our volume settings. We also have KDE Connect stuff as well. Not something I really actively use, but I know a lot of people out there really like KDE Connect, and for something like this, where it's sort of intended to be this, I guess, media consumption version of Plasma, I guess it makes sense as a way to share things with the device. In that quick settings menu, we have the first of our problems, and that is that tooltips only sometimes kinda work. So, no tooltip here, no tooltip here, no tooltip here, no tooltip here. If we go and click on this, as you might have seen there, the tooltip very briefly appeared, and now it works. That one still doesn't. That one still doesn't, and that one still doesn't. If we click the Wi-Fi settings or the network settings, you might have seen it appear. And now it works. But volume doesn't. There's clearly a bug here with the recognition of hovering over something, the point where you should be showing a tooltip, because they're obviously there, but they don't work most of the time. Whilst we're here, let's go into the general settings. We can navigate down to that using our arrow keys, or of course we could use the mouse. Let's do it with the arrow keys, press enter on settings, and we go into that. Now, from this screen, there's not really anything obvious that is missing. We will get to this screen, don't you worry. Pretty much everything I would want is available here. However, if there is something that is missing, you can go down to the desktop settings, and this is going to open the full Plasma settings application. From here, navigation with the keyboard can be a little bit weird, so you are going to want a mouse, like, you know, on a regular Plasma desktop, but all of these settings that you would normally have in Plasma, also, if they are relevant, obviously there are going to be some things which are specific to Plasma, like how to handle window management and things like that. Some of the theming might not work correctly, but pretty much everything that seems like it should be relevant in Plasma Bigscreen will be relevant in Plasma Bigscreen. You may have noticed the lack of sound when navigating around the interface. When you have a big screen interface, when you have a TV interface, something kind of like SteamOS, you sort of expect it to be there. This is not an oversight, this is just a default setting. If we go into the settings, go to the system settings, we can go and enable that with navigation sounds. Now, you probably already noticed the problem there. Sometimes it doesn't activate the sound until a few moves later. Why it does that? I actually have no idea. Let's try and disable it. Okay, let's go back into it. Re-enable, and right here. So it took like 1 or 2 moves to activate. Why? Who knows? Also, there is a sound for opening an application as well, like, say, console. Did that even make the sound? I have to go back and check that. It did, I just didn't hear it. I will say, the sounds, whilst they do exist, they very much sound like, placeholder sounds. So for now, I am going to keep them disabled, and we'll see what they do in a future version. Whilst I've shown you navigation, there is another way to open applications. We also still have access to Crunner like you would on regular Plasma. If you just start typing, let's say console, it'll open that up, and there we go, launches the application. Totally fine. So if you just want to have the interface here as a way to quickly access things, you can do that, and then anything else you want to access, do it the way you're already used to. Earlier I mentioned an on-screen keyboard. If you have a touchscreen, if you have a tablet, maybe this is something you're going to want to use. I have a mouse here, so obviously it's going to be a little bit awkward to properly show you, but I think I've got the setting enabled. I apparently don't. In case you didn't know, in Plasma 6.7, if you want to use the virtual keyboard with a mouse, there is now a setting to enable it with that. You wouldn't normally do this, but for the sake of the video, it is useful to have there. This is the Plasma Bigscreen settings being loaded through the desktop settings. I assume it's maybe a module or something else. Somehow, I'm not actually sure how the Plasma settings works behind the scenes, but I guess it can overwrite and conflict with it when you're running Bigscreen. It's totally fine in a regular Plasma session, but in Bigscreen, if I go to the desktop settings, I expect to see the desktop settings. I walked away from my machine briefly, and I came back to this. I'm not sure what happened here. Can we recover out of this state? Yes. I guess it's fine. Yep. Let's not think about that one again. Anyway, with that mess out of the way, now we have the virtual keyboard. It is still fairly early, and there's like a lot of work that probably needs to still go here. I don't know if it's going to work with every single application, but it does function. This is the Plasma keyboard that is being used on mobile Plasma as well, and everywhere else in Plasma. This is not just made for Plasma Bigscreen. Anyway, I can't really show off a virtual keyboard with a mouse, so we're going to be done with that. I did just notice, though, that it's disabled here, but it was enabled here. So if you enable it from desktop Plasma, that setting isn't respected in Plasma Bigscreen. And I had to enable it in desktop Plasma because of the issue with the settings being overwritten. If I go and enable it and disable it now, let's see what happens. No? Let's see if we go and enable it. Okay. So enabling it from the desktop settings is just gonna break everything. I found a bunch of bugs when I was going through the video prep. I'm finding more bugs now. I think if we set it back to touch and tablet, we should be fine, but I don't know if I plugged in a touchscreen or a tablet if it would now break. There's clearly problems here, though. Whilst we're talking about problems, I was not able to capture it, and it only happened a single time, but I did have a situation where I opened up the desktop settings, and my entire desktop, not just like had the crash handler, but everything went green. It was kind of like my GPU drivers crashed, so I don't know if it was actually a problem with Bigscreen, or it was a problem with my GPU, but it is at least worth noting. I have seen that happen once before going into desktop mode on the Steam Deck, which leads me to believe it very well may be a Plasma problem in some possible way. Now let's go and talk more about the apps. These are your regular applications on your regular system, and a lot of the ones made for Plasma, they're not really made for a big screen usage. They will work. They will certainly function. You can use them. But they're not made for an interface like this. Some of them will work somewhat well with a keyboard input. A lot of them, though, you know, like Dolphin here, I think you can like tab around stuff, yeah, but like the tab order is real strange. It requires a mouse, right? Like this app has not been modified to work in this environment. Mileage will absolutely vary. Some applications work much better than others, and if you're just opening up something like a Super Tux Cart, it's gonna work like Super Tux Cart does. But speaking of a video game, let us try a different input device. I have now plugged in a game controller, specifically my 8-bit DOE controller, and, well, we can navigate around the interface using this totally fine as well. If I press the A button, it is going to go and open this application. Note that a lot of things are probably not going to have controller input support, like the settings here. So, again, mileage may vary. If you do need mouse input, though, if you go and move the right stick, it should have been doing that. I don't know why it stopped now. It should be doing mouse emulation. It was doing so yesterday, totally fine. It's doing so from the menu here. I actually don't know why that has happened. Let us try with, console. Is that gonna work? Okay, it's working in console, but it's not working in the desktop settings. They're probably opening up the desktop settings in a different way. For a lot of things, this is not gonna be a great experience, but if you really need a mouse, it is better than nothing. But unlike on SteamOS, there is not a convenient way to go and open up your on-screen keyboard like this. Obviously, you could go and have it be like a mouse, but you go down to the bottom and then it opens up, but you don't have that nice controller input for typing around like you do with Steam input. But it is a first step, and it is better than nothing. Now, in this situation, we actually have a little bit of a problem. Let's say I didn't have a keyboard attached. Let's say I was just using the controller. How do I go and close the application? Well, let's see. Does this one, if we click the stick, we can actually do a mouse click. Does this one have a close? I don't think it actually does. This is a big problem. It is not obvious how we can go and close the application. If we just had a controller, we can't like press some key combination, at least that I'm aware of. What we can do is go up to the corner here, go into this, go over to the side, click on that, and then it closes. If we try to do the same thing with a keyboard, let's say I have Kmines open. This, I think, does have a close option in here. Yes, it does. So in this case, we'd go and click on quit or press Control Q. For other things, though, that may not have that, like Dolphin, for example, what we have to do is run the regular Plasma binding for closing a window. If you don't know what that is, you're not closing the window. There needs to be a better, more, like, built-in way for Plasma Bigscreen that explained in Plasma Bigscreen on how to do this. There is technically another workaround we can do. If we go into the settings and then we go down to system, we can go and enable window decorations. This, in my mind, is a little bit of a hack though, because now it just treats it like a full screen window on regular Plasma desktop. Then we can go and click up here and go and close that. Same thing when we talk about suspending or minimizing a window. We can go and now minimize the window, or we could use the binding for it, and then the window will remain open. We can actually have multiple applications open like this, but it really does feel like a hack to do it like this and not something specifically made for Plasma Bigscreen. This is one of the areas where it really shows it's still Plasma behind the scenes. It has not been built up in a way that is really sensibly designed for this kind of interface. That doesn't mean it can't be improved in the future, but right now it's a bit awkward to deal with. Another problem with controllers is there is a way to get into this menu right here, albeit bound in a weird way. On my 8BitDo controller, it is L2. Why is it L2? Why is it not start? I don't know. Let us try with the Xbox controller and see what it does. Is it still L2 on the Xbox? Yes. So it's not a problem of that controller just having weird bindings. Why is it L2 or left trigger or whatever the hell they call it? The bottom button on the left side. Start's right here. Start's not doing anything. Put it on start. These are problems, obviously, but with how minimal the controller support is right now, I don't really consider it to be a major blocker, right? Until you can actually truly use the interface, type things, actually entirely use a controller, yes, bindings are annoying, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like a very, very low tier problem. Also, because this application here has taken over the input, there is no way to go and open that sidebar settings menu, like, at all from this screen. Like, we can press left trigger, we can press escape. Obviously, escape would do something in this application. There is no way to get back to that. So the only way to access the settings is by going out to the desktop, out to the big screen, and then accessing them from here. It's annoying. It's not the end of the world. But it is one of those things where it's like, this is not great. Let's switch gears a little and talk about something that is actually good. The customize favorites option here. So we can go and take certain applications. Let's say the, I don't know, emoji selector, firewall, and K-calc, because I'm the most exciting person. Then if we escape out of this, Now we have another section of the applications that we frequently want to access. This is totally fine. This is a good feature. If I was to complain about anything, I would like the option to make arbitrary groups, because whilst things like recent and applications and games are being auto-generated, you probably have one here for media tools and other things like that, there's other arbitrary groupings that a user might want to have for themselves. Like, let's say you have work stuff here. Let's say game development. And there comes a point where default categories eventually start getting so niche that a lot of people are only going to have like one or two things there. So either make them and then have the option to disable them, or just let the user go and make custom groups. Now, I've had it here the entire time and I've not opened it thus far. You probably noticed the Steam client. Opening up Steam the first time on a clean install can be a little bit jank. My recommendation is open it up on a regular desktop, log in, do all of that good stuff, and then set it to launch on big picture mode. And then when you do that, well, then you get a actually pretty solid experience. Because now what we're doing is going from a controller interface directly into a controller interface, and I don't need to show you Steam Big Picture Mode for you to know that Steam Big Picture Mode works really well. And this is what's kind of annoying, because I can see what this is trying to be. When this works well, it works really, really well. The problem is that right now, there's still a lot of areas where it needs polish, a lot of areas where there are issues, a lot of areas where it is still very much a problem. But it's such a cool base, it is such a cool idea, and I want this project to do well. I want there to be a version of Plasma that has really good controller input, that works great on a big screen, where everything just works nicely with a controller or with a keyboard and mouse if that's what you want to do, but preferably with a controller if you're sitting back on a couch, and you can just use Plasma however you want to use it. Whilst this is far, far from ready in its current state, it's a little bit too crashy to even recommend daily driving, even with a keyboard and mouse. I'm excited for this project. I really hope it keeps going. I hope it picks up steam. I hope more people get involved. And if you want to go and support the project, I'll leave all of the links in the description down below. Please go and do so, because honestly, I think this is super cool, and I need more like this. Basically, nobody's doing this outside of random niche little projects or Unity from like 10 plus years ago. And with that being said, let me know your thoughts. Is this something you'd consider running? Do you think it's cool in its current state? Is this something you don't even remotely care about? I would love to know. So if you liked the video, go and like the video, go subscribe as well, and if you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, subscribe to the Liberapay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and please, please make big screen a thing.